Thank you for staying with us. Let's talk about functional education and matters arising. It was Nelson Mandela who said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. The United Nations agrees with him, noting that education enables upward socioeconomic mobility and is key to escaping poverty. Education helps reduce inequalities, reach gender equality, and foster tolerance and peaceful societies. UNESCO recently disclosed that Nigeria now has 20 million out-of-school children, and that is alarming and indeed unfortunate. The UK-based NGO Save the Children previously painted a gloomy picture of the situation with its 2021 Global Childhood Report, which says Nigeria remains one of the most challenging places to be a child. The country ranks below conflict-ridden Yemen and Syria due to poverty, lack of schools, insecurity, and tradition. Public secondary and tertiary education flounder, while public tertiary institutions require funding. Let's have conversations around this and how to attain what I call functional education with Professor Florence Obi, who is Vice Chancellor, University of Calabar. She's former Deputy Vice Chancellor, academic, former Commissioner for Women Affairs and Social Development in Cross River State. She's a former board member of NUC and a Professor of Special Needs and Inclusive Education. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Prof. Quite the dossier you have, wouldn't you say? Quite the dossier.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome, ma'am. Let's begin with what you consider, having been VC, a major challenge in Nigeria's tertiary education, well, maybe education generally you may want to speak to, and then tertiary education more specifically. That is advisable because that is, the understanding that I've had over the years is that university ought to train you to be an entrepreneur, at least to be entrepreneurial minded and not just to be seeking a white-collar job. I also thought that technical education is supposed to, as well as polytechnic education, is supposed to help you in that regard. What are the challenges you would say we've had to contend with over the years in this regard?
Well, I want to agree with you on what you just said about UNESCO and what you said, your reference to Nelson Mandela. Education in our system is such that has not really been able to train our young ones and beneficiaries to be able to develop the skills that they will obtain a living after school, so that everybody looks forward to having a civil service or white-collar job. I think it's a carry-over from the days of the old, where people were just prepared for a white-collar job and then they fit into civil service. But the dynamics are actually changing. And I think that the basic challenge we are having now is inadequate funding. And let me say here that as much as it is expected that education must be adequately and properly funded, for instance, the UNESCO you referred to have really projected that 4 to 6% of our GDP should be on education, and that the overall public expenditure between 15 and 20% of a budget should be on education. But that is not the system in our own country. But going forward, I think that for education to be properly funded in the system, it must be paid for.
Okay. Well,
we have a scenario where we are looking up to government every day to appropriately fund education, and government keeps telling us that there is no money to properly fund education. For instance, in federal universities, aside paying of salaries and overhead or that will not actually even pay one bill, one electricity for a month, you could combine like 4 or 5 overheads for 5 months to pay electricity in a university. It's not enough to actually produce the quality of of students we are looking out to. When people travel out here of our country, they go, they pay well for education, and they really get the best. So I think it is high time for us to begin to look inwards on how we can pay for functional education.
Well, let me ask you.
I keep saying government alone cannot fund it.
Okay, great. So let me ask you, first of all, pointedly, as it stands today, particularly tertiary education, do you think we produce, do you think we give functional education that can produce productive Nigerians after a 4-year or 6-year course in the university?
Yes. Yes. I think we actually are giving functional education. If you think that the system, our product from universities are not doing well in Nigeria, just check out those who go out. They don't go out to have further education. They fit into the system and they do well. Perhaps what is our problem is the environment. The environment they come out to operate in, the fact that they lacked even space to be able to be creative. Our education is functional. Today in the university, almost every university has a very functional entrepreneurship center. And in the entrepreneurship center, students are taught functional skills, soft skills, hard skills, critical analysis skills, skills to synthesize, all sorts of skills are taught to our students.
Well, I'm not sure, Prof, that this is a fact that
if
cuts
our students
across.
are given an enabling environment, they can function.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's a fact that many people will agree with you all across the nation for two reasons. Number one, we have had computer science graduates who said they never saw one computer. We've had science students who said they hardly ever visited laboratories. And I also recall, you may as well, former Minister of Labour, Dr. Christine Gege, saying that at some public forum that a good number of young graduates in Nigeria are unemployable. So if they are not employable, according to an official of the federal government at the level of a minister, would you say then that they are functional if they are not employable?
It's not everybody that is not employable, and I still believe that our education is functional. Functional in the aspect that when our graduates leave Nigeria, they do absolutely perfectly well outside.
This position you hold, ma'am,
are now coming in to recruit our graduates.
Yeah, this
meaning
position,
that they have the skills for them to be functional in a system.
Yeah,
so if you are saying that our students in Nigeria are unemployable, that has to do with what I've said earlier, that we lack enough adequate funding for us to have so much.
We'll come to that, Prof. My apologies.
I have not seen a
come back to that.
I doubt if that student is even fair to himself.
Yes.
We have all sorts of students. Some of them are ceremonial students.
Just 1 second. Is this information you are giving us about functional education, about public universities or private universities? And for public universities, are you talking about federal universities or state universities?
All
of them.
We may not have 100%. Everybody who come out of the university may not have given himself up to actually acquire so much. But to generalize it and say that our educational system or Nigerian higher institution educational system is not functional, I will not agree to that.
Okay.
Both public universities, private universities, during the days of strike, 8 months of strike, I lost about 50% of my staff. I lost a lot of people going out. And even today, our staff are still being recruited. The same staff who are teaching in Federal University, in University of Calabar, are being recruited every day in other universities. So it's not about them not being able to impact the best. What I'm saying is that we are not adequately funded. We are not adequately funded. We need more funds. We need more funds. And if we are to really be adequately funded, then we should pay for it. Because that's what government is telling us, that they cannot pay for education. They cannot adequately fund education because of competing needs. So I think that we should pay. You were about narrowing into private universities where the students, they pay so much. And I think that even the federal universities, with the little we have, we are giving in our very best to form students, to produce students who go out and can hold their own anywhere in the world.
Okay. Well, Prof, I wasn't making a case for private universities, just to be clear. I'm just asking basic questions. Would you say it's because it's some private universities that pay more or public universities? I was just asking questions. So you're in the education space, so, and you have been commissioner for education, for women affairs. You've been a commissioner, so you at least will speak at fora in the government of the day when you were commissioner, where these conversations are had. Now, when you talk about improving tertiary education, more funding and all of that, you are not unaware of the acclaimed Student Loan Act and the program of the federal government now to champion this cause of students' loan being coming into fore. ASU, for instance, has said they don't agree that student loan is giving students loan is going to do much. Rather, it's probably even going to send more people out of the universities because not many people will have the courage to take it. So for you, how do you see that student loan program working? Do you think it will significantly, no, maybe not fully, but do you think it will significantly boost funding for universities?
Is that boosting funding for universities? It's rather giving the students opportunity to get loan to further their education. Now it has not taken off, but if it is properly implemented like it is in even other African countries, in Ghana, for instance, the student loan scheme is well implemented, is well thought of, and people plan very well for it. If we can plan, especially, and it's open to every student who actually need it, I think even the fear of ASU is not about absolutely rejecting, but rather saying that those who actually may be in need of this loan may not be the ones that will access the loans. Typical of Nigeria, perhaps the loan could go to those who have even, who shouldn't ordinarily be qualified for the loan. But I think it should be well thought out and it should be well properly planned. And I think it's a good development. We should give the government the opportunity to try it. And then thereafter we know if there are challenges, if there are problems, then they refine them. I was in Ghana as a visiting scholar, and I know that students there assess student loans scheme. So why can't we try it in Nigeria? I think we should equally try it in the country.
Do you see any chance, I mean, speaking about that specifically, and I'm glad I'm really speaking to you about this because you have been Vice Chancellor of a university, so you have an idea of how it works. What are the things that you believe Nigeria should look out for, particularly? Now, there are three major stakeholders here now. One is the students who will get the loans, and they can only get a particular amount from whichever school. The second is the university system itself, which is going to give the tuition fees and all those fees that the students have to pay from that particular loan. The third are the lecturers. One of the allegations that I'm sure you are aware of is that, lecturers come up with all kinds of ways to make money by giving the students one handout or the other, which may or may not be covered in the loans that these students collect from schools, so from the federal government. So speak to each of these sectors and what the challenges or bottlenecks could be that need to be considered in the execution of this student loan program.
Well, I think I would rather look at the sustainability rather than the three issues you raised, the sustainability of the student loan program. Now, it's supposed to be a revolving loan. How are the students going to pay back this loan on graduation if there are no jobs, if the environment is not conducive for them to even create jobs for themselves, if we don't have infrastructure like for them to be able to use and create jobs. Electricity is getting, by the day, is getting more problematic, and the students would begin to think of how do we create these jobs, how do we generate the money to refund. That is actually the aspect that is worrisome to me, which I think government should actually look at. Giving students maybe 3-5 years upon completion of graduation and post-NYSC to start payment. If they don't have jobs, what is the problem? But I think that a student, on the part of student, any student who gets a loan and knows that I have a loan, they will make maximum use of the loan. They will make maximum use, pay their fees. They will get more serious with their studies because they know that there's a limited time they can access this loan, and thereafter they will get out and then will be faced with repayment plan and process. So I think that they will get more serious. It will make them more studious. Yes, the lecturers, we are being accused every day that of sorting. I agree. There is a lot of manipulation, a lot of sorting in the system. But I think it's not every lecturer out there. The issue is that there are few people who are out there and ruining the name of the universities and bringing down the efforts of the majority of the lecturers who are working day and night and giving out their very best to see that the system works well. So I think that if there are measures put in place, like we are doing in our university, where we have come out with other levies that lecturers, departments and faculties can collect from the students, and when you go outside that, you get into trouble with the administration. And if universities will put in measures to checkmate all the excesses, our own excesses of some colleagues who are the bad eggs, I think that will go down well with in the system.
Well, while we're on the subject of lecturers, you are not unaware of the news about a certain lecturer in the University of Calabar, where you currently govern, a certain Cyril Ndifon who is being accused. What can you tell? Being accused of sexual harassment, and to the point that it must have been very, very embarrassing for you to even think about it. But because you govern that institution for now, what can you tell us, and how far so far?
Well, for the accusation of sexual harassment levied against one of my colleagues and the former suspended Dean of Faculty of Law, we leave that to the panel which we have constituted. Yes, of course, I am aware of it, and we have given a press conference. We are putting measures, put up measures to see that going forward, such occurrences are curtailed. You can't completely eradicate sexual harassment in school. You can't eradicate that because it happens everywhere, every country, everywhere. It does happen. But the impunity, the serial abuse, the way and manner in which this is done is where it becomes a problem. And I think that in my university, we have put up so many measures that we know going forward, the Faculty of Law, nobody in the Faculty of Law will hold the students to ransom and make any female student so vulnerable to having a moral relationship with him. So we are doing so much. We, like I said, we have put about 7 committees in place. There is a committee now to assign students to supervisors, because they are accused and alleged that the suspended dean normally will want to take all the female students to supervise, and that makes them vulnerable to his advances. Now there's a committee to handle that. There is a committee to look at mobilization to law school, which students alleged in their protest letter to us that they use that as an intimidation, as a way of getting some of them to succumb, that if they don't accept, they may not be mobilized to law school. We have set up a committee to do that. There is a result vetting committee. We have also made a clean sweep in the faculty where we have the acting dean for now, a woman, the sub-dean acting a woman, the faculty officer a woman. We want to give these students, we want to see that the students are protected, and so many other things were put in place to be sure that the students will get through this whole process. And I am accessible. My principal officers are all very accessible. And for your information, my 46,000 students all have my number. I have only one phone number, and it's available to all the students. So they have access to me, and that is why they can easily report the happenings, even in the Faculty of Law. As an administration, we have put in some checks that will make sure that going forward, that no longer, or we curtail that, really.
I really don't envy you right now. 46,000 students having your own phone number. I wonder what your WhatsApp must look like right now. But, you know, is there a role for the alumni of universities in curtailing this kind of situation and others like that? It is a little worrisome. Well, you said it's something that happens all over the place. It's still a little mysterious for me why, you know, people who are supposed to be under you, looking up to you, whose lives literally, you know, are in your hands, you know, have to be subjected to such harrowing experiences, which have scandalized so many down through the years. So is there a role for the alumni of any institution of higher learning in that regard to ensure that things go well in the universities and such things as you are having to go through now don't even come to you? The alumni can deal with it. Is there a role for them in ensuring that universities run well?
Yeah, the alumni has a role to play, but principally, the role of alumni will be based on extant laws. Now, if the president of the country will assent to the anti-sexual harassment bill that has been passed, and I think it has been passed on to him for assent, if he will assent to it, then it will help institutions at least be able to cope and be able to also deal with some of these occurrences. So I will first call on the president of the country to please do assent to that bill to protect our girl child, to protect the female students, and to protect every other student who finds him or herself in the higher institution. Now, going forward on the role of alumni, for instance, in our university, we have a very robust alumni body supported by the Endowment and Trust Fund, which is chaired by His Excellency Mr. Donald Duke, and the alumni national president, Professor Yakubu Ochefu, and the board of trustee chairman. They are all doing very well. Like we had this problem when this issue came up on the 14th of the month. Everybody called. People are worried. They have gone on air. They are making their own comments as press statements. In fact, the BOT chairman of the alumni had even threatened court action with such randy lecturers. They are all concerned. So what alumni should do is perhaps to organize more public fora, organize workshops, conferences, maybe retreats even with lecturers and even the students more, so that we can all build the confidence level of the students to say no at any time. We can all make sure that the students are properly groomed and to speak out when they think that they are threatened. And I think we make sure that we move the students from being timid to those students who can actually speak out, who are vocal, and who can say, look, I'm being harassed, and come out and speak. So what I will also ask the alumni to do is to interface with the students, to interface with the alleged abused students, so that build their confidence, so that they can come out and to the panel and present evidence and talk to the panel. That's all I can say. The alumni should do right now, outside other functions that we expect alumni to raise money to support the university.
Expectedly, Prof. But you know, I can't let you go without asking you a question, particularly around your own area of specialty. You're a professor of special needs and inclusive education. as a nation of 200 million people and 36 states, how entrenched is special needs and inclusive education?
Well, I wouldn't say it is very entrenched. I would say that it's just a new area that people are beginning to get aware of. We had come from the era where people hit their special children. They never brought them out for people to know. They never let neighbors to even know they had a special child. To the era where they can now send and dump them in special schools without even going back to look at them. So today's era where parents drive their special children to school and pick them like every other child because they are like every other child, but just with a special need. So I think that the government has gone a step further by passing the discriminatory law on disability. That law has taken effect, but as much as the law empowers people to go to court when they are discriminated against, if they are refused admission, if the school environment is not accessible to them. Also, it gave about 5 years laxitude for the institutions to actually reposition themselves to begin to take this. Today, there are many more special children, special people who are having access to education than the case some 10, 20 years ago.
Okay.
We also have many of them getting employment. So gradually, the nation is beginning to recognize their potentials, their capability, their capacity, and beginning to integrate them into the system. It's a slow process though, but yet we recognize the fact that we are not where we were some years back. We are not where we are supposed to be, but going forward, we are really moving forward and getting things done. And when we talk about inclusivity, I think that with the discriminatory law, the law that was assented to by the former president, it's actually meant to make people to be included, to an inclusive society, an inclusive environment for persons with special needs.
Well, thank you so much.
I think that they are even more vocal now. They have a better voice than in the case some years back. So I think we are moving forward.
We're moving forward. We're not where we were, but we are no longer where... We're not where we want to be, but we're not where we should be. Well, thank you so much for being here this morning. Professor Florence Obi, Vice Chancellor, University of Calabar, former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, a former Commissioner for Women Affairs and Social Development in Cross River State, and former board member of the NUC, Nigeria Universities Commission. She's also a professor of special needs and inclusive education. Thank you so much for your time and your perspectives this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So Sunrise is back in a moment to talk about tech. What department? You've got to wait. We'll be back.